Conservatism. You hear the word all the time, right? It's one of those big isms that gets thrown around in politics and the news. But what does it actually mean? What does it stand for? Well, today we are going to unpack this incredibly complex and, let's be honest, often misunderstood political philosophy. Let's get into it.
Okay, just take a look at these faces. You've got Edmund Burke, a statesman from the 1700s. You have Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, who basically defined the 1980s. And then you have someone like Pat Buchanan, who has been a major critic of American interventionism. Every single one of them has been called a conservative. So how? How can one single word possibly describe such a wide-ranging and, frankly, sometimes contradictory group of people? That is the puzzle we're going to solve.
All right, to solve this puzzle, we have to go back, way back, to the beginning, to the man who is widely considered the intellectual architect of the whole thing.
And here he is, Edmund Burke. He was an Irish-born member of the British Parliament, a brilliant writer, a philosopher, and, fun fact, while he didn't really call himself a conservative, that term wasn't popular until much later, his ideas became the absolute bedrock of the entire movement.
Now, what is so fascinating about Burke is how he reacted to the two massive revolutions of his lifetime. Get this, he actually supported the American Revolution. He saw it as the colonists simply defending the traditional rights they had as Englishmen. But the French Revolution, oh, he was horrified, absolutely appalled. He saw it as a violent, chaotic attempt to completely tear down society and rebuild it from scratch based on abstract, untested ideas. And his reaction, which he laid out in his book, is really the modern conservatism was born.
In this quote right here, it just perfectly captures his whole philosophy. For Burke, society wasn't some simple contract you could just tear up and rewrite whenever you felt like it. No, it was a sacred partnership that stretched across time, a trust between the past, the present, and the future. It means we have a profound duty to respect the wisdom we've inherited and to preserve it for those who come after us.
So, and this is the crucial part, Burke wasn't against change. He was against demolition. He believed in the idea of reform to conserve. Think of it like a beautiful, historic building. A revolutionary wants to bring in the wrecking ball and build a shiny new tower based on a brand new blueprint. But a Burkean conservative, they want to be a careful renovator. Fix the leaky roof, update the plumbing, but always preserve the fundamental structure and soul of the original house.
But of course, the story doesn't stop there. Conservatism didn't just stay one single idea. As time went on, it hit a major fork in the road, splitting into two big branches that are often pulling in very different directions.
So on one side, you've got fiscal conservatism. This is all about the economy. The focus here is on free markets, low taxes, small government, ideas that actually come from what's known as classical liberalism. Then on the other side, you have social conservatism. This is all about culture and morality. It's about preserving traditional values and institutions like family and religion to keep society stable. Now, can one person be both? Absolutely. But their different priorities can create a lot of tension.
And that tension only gets more intense when we look at a more recent and even sharper split, one that really fractured American conservatism, especially after the Cold War ended.
We're talking about the neoconservatives versus the paleoconservatives. And I mean, just look at this chart. On the biggest issues, they are often polar opposites. Foreign policy, neocons are interventionists who think America should be out in the world spreading democracy. Paleocons are hardcore isolationists, America first. You see the same deep split on trade, on immigration, even on how big the government itself should be. It's a fundamental clash of worldviews.
This wasn't some minor disagreement over policy details. No, this was, and still is, a deep philosophical battle for the very soul of the American conservative movement. It really shows you just how fractured the house of conservatism can be. So, how do we make sense of all this?
Okay, so how can all these contradictory ideas fit under one single label? Well, the answer starts to make sense when you realize that maybe conservatism isn't an ideology in the way we usually think of one. It's less a checklist of beliefs and more of a disposition.
The political scientist Samuel P. Huntington had a great term for this. He called it a positional ideology. What that means is that conservatism isn't defined by some timeless universal goal like liberty or equality. Instead, it's defined by the situation. It's a response. It's the impulse to defend the existing institutions of your society when they're being challenged by some radical new idea. So what it wants to conserve totally depends on what's being threatened and when.
The philosopher Michael Oakeshott just nailed this idea. He said the conservative disposition is simply a preference for the familiar over the unknown, the tried over the untried. He said it's about choosing fact to mystery, the actual to the possible. You see, it's a temperament, a certain kind of personality that's skeptical of grand plans to remake the world and instead puts its trust in what has stood the test of time.
Okay, so let's boil it all down. If you remember nothing else, remember these three things. Number one, conservatism is best understood as a situational mindset, an instinct to protect established institutions from radical challenges. Number two, its modern DNA comes directly from Edmund Burke's reaction to the French Revolution. And number three, it is not one single thing. It's a house divided, full of major and often conflicting wings.
And all of this leads us to one last big question. In a world that is changing faster than ever, with technology, culture, and global power all in flux, the very definition of what's established is constantly up for grabs. So the central question for our time is, what will conservatism seek to conserve next?